This morning I'd like to introduce Dr. David Ernst. He's the Chief Information Officer in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Minnesota. Dr. Ernst is the Director of the Center for Open Education, and he's also the Executive Director of the Open Textbook Network, the OTN. The OTN is an alliance of 600 higher education institutions committed to improving education through the use of open textbooks. David created and manages the Open Textbook Library, a single source for faculty to find quality, openly licensed textbooks. Dr. Ernst.
Here we go. Good morning. Good morning. It's early. I'll forgive you for that. Okay. My name is David Ernst. I'm, as was mentioned, I'm from the University of Minnesota. I want to take some time today. Whoops. I should actually stop first and tell you how happy I am to be here. I think I'm happier than any of the other speakers. Did I mention I'm from Minnesota? And it's February. I want to talk today about a few short things here. I'm going to give you the cliff notes right up front. Here's the summary of today's talk. Number one, something needs to be done. Number two, we collectively are the right people to do it. It can be done, and you're not alone in doing it. Thank you. Have a good day. And so I want to start by basically saying this is the message, I guess, when we're going around and talking with institutions, this is really the message that we're trying to portray, is that higher education has a responsibility to doing the right thing in this instance. And we're really focused on that. My job, my PhD is in learning technologies, educational technologies, right? And people who go into that field generally go into it for, they like technology, to put it bluntly, right? They're technophiles, kind of, and they like the newest gadgets and all of that. I never in my life thought that I'd be spending a big chunk of my career talking about textbooks. But that's the reality, and that's because, it's not because I love textbooks, but it's because I wake up thinking about this. This is from the UN's Declaration of Human Rights, which basically says that higher education should be, everyone should have equal access to higher education, no matter who they are. And when I first saw that, I would say that my U.S. Western-centric perspective, I kind of thought, those poor people in other countries that don't have access to higher education. But as I got more involved in this project that we'll talk about here today, realized that it's really an issue here in the United States as well. Perhaps in a different way, perhaps not. This is a study done for the U.S. Department of Education showing that in the first decade of this century, there were 2.4 million students who, because of cost, did not finish college. Because of cost. There were a lot more who didn't finish college, high school graduates. But these are the ones who contributed to the cost. If it wasn't for the cost, they would have 1.4 million students. That tells me that there's a challenge, there's an issue here. And why is that? The issue is cost. The issue is that cost is different than it's ever been before. The cost structure for students. For public education, we have two main sources of funding. We have tuition, we have state funding. This graph shows across the United States how that funding has shifted over time. On the left side of the graph is a little bit after I graduated as an undergrad. And you can see the percentage of the burden that was on me. The purple line, that's the tuition. Look at today, and it's getting pretty close to 50-50, and the burden on the student has pretty much doubled. This is Florida data. Not as extreme. The burden on the student, though, has still almost doubled. Almost, not quite. In Minnesota, by the way, these lines crossed in about 2011. and they continued on their way, diverging. Now the students pay the vast majority of the costs. I was just in the UK, and they went from, in the 90s, 0% is what the students would pay, to today, 100%. In Australia, I was just there as well, and they're seeing a similar shift. It's happening everywhere in higher education. So if this reality, how are students dealing with it? Where are they going to find money? What options do they have? What can they do to deal with this? What?
Work.
They can work. What else? What's the one other big thing that they do? Borrow money, right? We know that. As far as working goes, here's the reality of working. If you look at the 60s through the 80s, did any of us finish undergrads in the 60s? I won't have. You don't have to raise your hand. You could, so this graph shows the number of hours a student would need to work at minimum wage, a student job, right, to afford a year of tuition at the University of Minnesota. This is the historical data I have, so just as an example. In the 60s through the 80s, it was 200 to 400 hours. That equates to a summer job, right? 40 hours a week for 10 weeks, 400 hours. Today, a full-time job, by the way, 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, it's 2,080 hours. We're getting close to it, right up here. The minimum wage in Minnesota went up recently, which is why the graph dropped, which is great. This little star here at the end, that is the number of hours students would need to work in the state of Florida for a $10,000 annual tuition. I just picked a number. Since there's so many institutions in here, I just picked 10,000. So you get an idea. So working your way through school, like a summer job, and not being a full-time student, if you ask faculty, they all know, or excuse me, not being a full-time employee. If you ask faculty, they know students, a lot of students who are full-time employees, along with being a student, because they need to be. As far as borrowing money goes, this is becoming almost a national crisis. You heard it in the last presidential election. This graph, the purple line here is student borrowing, student debt. The yellow line here is credit card debt nationally. And so about 2010 or so, they crossed. You can see where the recession happened and the credit card spending kind of flattened out, but student spending kept going up. So in the last, this is 2006, this is only 11, 12 years ago. Student debt nationally was less than $500 billion. Today it's 1.4. So in 11 years, it is pretty much tripled student debt nationally. And you're seeing default rates climb, you're seeing, well anyway, you get the idea. This is the result. How many of your institutions have a food pantry that you know of? Wow. In 2008, I believe there were 4 known food pantries in the country and college campuses. So, okay. So what can we do? Here are the costs, pretty much. This is how the federal government breaks out higher education costs. Any guess of which one of those we're going to talk about today? This one, you're right, okay. So, I'm bringing all of these up because I want to make it clear that it's obvious that textbook costs are not, and course material costs are not the highest cost when it comes to higher education. Right? I would say it's probably somewhat vaguely in that order, maybe. Right? Tuition and fees, room and board, then maybe books, maybe a little bit better than that. Why are we spending 2 days talking about this one? Why aren't we spending 2 days talking about those top 2 or the top 1? Do something about it. And in fact, faculty are the only ones who can do something about it, right? And as we work with faculty, it's our job to help them understand that this is a responsibility they have to think about, right? That's right. And so it's because we can do, anyone in here, can you control the tuition and fees in your institution? So there's one other thing, there's one other reason. It's because it might not be the largest, but it has a disproportionate impact on student success. Disproportionate to its size compared to all these other costs. Textbook costs, you've seen a number of graphs yesterday. Textbook prices have been going up at 3 or 4 times the rate of inflation. Here's an economist from the University of Michigan who did a study, and basically he said, here's the quote, "Textbook prices have all been going up at a much faster rate than any other consumer product. Period." Think of things that you know are going up fast: healthcare costs, tuition, anything else, and textbook prices beat it. The College Board, you've seen this numbers the last day or so too, they're saying $1,200 to $1,400 or so for, that's what students should budget. To be perfectly honest, students do not spend this much. They have research shows that they actually spend between $600 and $800 a year. They're asked to budget by their institutions that much. Why the difference? They don't buy the books. Right. If you spend any time in a classroom, you know they don't buy the books sometimes. Or they find ways to survive the cost that doesn't involve actually buying the books, paying for them, right? I have just a few quick short videos I wanted to show just to kind of bring the student voice to this. As I mentioned, it's been a while since I've been a new student. And so we basically just asked a few quick questions. And here's the first one.
I really value that the cost of books. Well, not too much for students who are already being population.
We get awesome and books, which is going on, everything's going on, possibilities going on, and textbooks are going on.
There is definitely a value to them, but you're not going to let it cost it. You pay for them.
I mean, I guess professors are trying to invest in the books that are reasonable, but we have to invest those that are just it's way too pricey.
This is like very overpriced.
I get the question of, you have to buy a book, that's expensive that you
I have to certainly use for so long before you're done. So I have stuff like you use it a couple months and then I've never done it.
People weren't just issuing new editions and just increasing prices down to stick to what you have.
And it's kind of expensive. And sometimes I feel like I have to buy a textbook because it's required. So it kind of start to like throw away so much money and something you don't use for a semester.
It should be the same textbook for some years, but the materials are changing a lot.
I don't heard this one that I'm just kind of frustrating.
I think it's outrageous actually. It costs too much.
It pointed out to me that perhaps the University of Minnesota's bookstore doesn't need to sell books because they're doing really well with apparel. Now, there was nothing earth-shattering there in that video, right? I mean, this is just, that's kind of what you would expect students to say. You've maybe heard that before. But I want to point out some kind of common theme that went through all of those comments. And that was universal, what you heard there. Nobody said, textbooks don't cost enough. And they didn't even say, yes, it's reasonable. Every single one of them was saying, kind of like, I would summarize it like this. They'd say, yeah, I kind of get it, that they're important, but, and then after that comes some value judgment, right? Like, And so the thing I want to point out here is that sometimes students get the blame. Sometimes students, you should just be responsible about it, figure it out, pull yourself up, and just do it. Students aren't dumb. When they show up as freshmen, well, maybe they're not quite as smart then, but they will, when they're freshmen, generally buy everything, or close to everything. They're more likely to buy all the required textbooks. And then they have this experience. What experience do they have when they're freshmen in that? They don't use it, right? Inevitably, that just happens. And I'm not blaming anybody, not whatever, it just happens. They're not dumb. The next time around, do you think that they're going to think twice about buying the book? Of course they are. I have 3 sons. 2 years ago, they were all 3 in college at the same time. Yeah, right. And, we told them when they started that, we will do what we can to help you, but you need to live like students. Pretty sure most students hear that message, or they don't even hear it. They just know that they have to live like students. That's their reality, right? And we did what we could. It's not like it was a surprise. It was coming for 18 years. But when I asked my sons, did you buy your books yet? I still have 2 that are in. One's graduating this term. And I'll ask them, and they'll say, well, not yet. Right? Again, I appreciate the fact that they're thinking about living like a student and making the most of what they've been given. I appreciate that. I tell them to go buy the books anyway, but I do appreciate that. And so what I'm trying to say is, I guess, this is a tough tension for them. They're getting all sorts of messaging. They're living the way they need to live, and they're making value judgments as they're being asked to do. So what do students do? These are the strategies that we find students saying that they do to kind of get around the cost. Right? And I'm not talking here about what bookstores do or what libraries do. I'm talking about what students do. Purchase an older edition, delay buying the textbook, don't buy the textbook, share it with other students, or download textbooks from the internet, which is code for saying what? Maybe perhaps risking violating copyright, right? By finding something online. About a third of students every semester say that they do that. Okay? I've separated this one because it's a legal risk. It's a little bit different than the other 4. Those are not legal risks. But I want to point out they are risks. What kind of a risk are they? Right, an academic risk, right? Falling behind. So I want to just quickly touch on each one of them. Buying an older edition. Right? A student told me this. He was asked to buy an $80 French textbook. He found one on Amazon for $8, but it was 2 editions older. This was the justification, which I kind of agree with. But in the next sentence, he said to me, but I know that I'm taking a risk. I get it, but it's what I can do. Right? You've seen stats all this week here about delaying purchasing. This is the state of Minnesota basically saying that 60% of students pretty much are saying that they have to wait. They wait till their financial aid check comes in. And that's about 3 weeks into the term, right, after the drop deadline. One other short little video here. This is the question we asked. Have you ever delayed buying?
I usually wait until I feel like there's a need in the class to buy the textbook, or if I'm falling behind and I can't find another resource for free online that would also give me that information. And then I'll buy a textbook.
I haven't delayed purchasing a textbook until it was completely yesterday.
Yes, I have. Unfortunately. I had some trouble because of the textbook system that I wrote out, so in order to go on a class, you need to have that textbook, and because it costs so much, a lot of people have problem getting required text in there before they start with class, and they shouldn't just start with it.
I don't know if you heard that first one, but he said, I wait on the line, and I can't find something free on the internet, and it was like all the criteria until he actually would go out and buy the book, until he felt like he absolutely had to. And I think that's become the rule, not the exception. That's just how students function. Make it look out. And you've already seen this a number of times this week. Again, students, 60 to 70% of students saying that they just sometime in their academic career don't purchase a textbook at all. And all of these things, all of these strategies basically to survive this are academic risks. Delaying buying, not buying a book is a big risk. What that leads to is this. These numbers, by the way, are not national numbers. These are Florida numbers. This is research. The open education community owes a big debt of gratitude to the Florida virtual campus for this research. This is my understanding, about 20,000 students or so. So you can see the impact that it's having. Remember the cliff notes in the beginning? Something needs to be done. That was my first topic. If this doesn't convince you that, I have one other piece of evidence. So I have one last video of a young man talking about his experience. The one strategy I haven't talked about is sharing textbooks. That's one of his strategies. And when I first heard about it, students started doing that more and more in the last few years. And when I first heard about it, I thought, well, it's not the worst strategy in the world. That seems like, okay, I can see how that could work maybe. See if you can pick out kind of some of the challenges that he's having with that strategy.
Carlson. I have a question related to study entrepreneurial management and maybe my management commission system. I actually decided upon 2 of the large textbooks after kind of floating around and really asking people taking courses. We have this in before. That's one I said that I felt really belongs from those. That was today for the cost of textbooks on top of and so I have 2 of the part textbooks, and comparing a third textbook between see what my roommates have got in the wall. And yeah, it's the other thing I just got really worried about because I mean I don't have enough money for that else. But it becomes bothersome when I have to travel, you know, without the ones turning down on the test. But I think I mean, there's sometimes where I need to go and so I just have to go my funds and go late at night and be like sure that's something. Sometimes I have to stay up until 3, 4, 5 and it goes to 3 hours and go to class because I mean that's what is available. A lot of times just you get further out to me or you didn't have time to study tomorrow. I had a test and I forgot to study last week. It's just kind of down because it's like, you know, you struggle to get that money. There's something that you have to worry for the day. That you have enough money to pay for textbooks to get a brother's back and everything. So it's cool. I might actually end up having to schedule courses around one of my roommates that you don't know taking related to that book, and I might have to take that class kind of thing. Because it's something that maybe doesn't interest me, but it fulfills the requirement that I'm going to have to take that because that's $200 in textbooks. I was so kind of shocked because I completely broke by textbook last year, so I think I will kind of manage which ones I'm going to buy, and it's just kind of, it's almost, you know, the second to it, I call it, always kind of, this past year, I probably spent more than $1,000, and I hadn't even bought all of the required texts in the buy. It's been, a difficult.
What you catch there as far as sharing what the challenges among all the other? Yeah,
I can imagine. I didn't think of this when I first heard about the sharing strategy, but of course, for a test, everyone's going to want it, right? So he's going to be waiting until taking classes he's not necessarily interested in. Did you hear that part of it? Because his friends or roommates have a very bad book, he would, want to get in on that. Is that what we want for our students? Saw a number of people not shaking their heads at that one. But you can see the challenges, right? That all of this is great. This story that he tells is illuminating. This is a student, there's not everything in the video there. I mean, he had a full-time job. He was also getting paid as a medical research subject, which I'm not quite sure what that means, but he had maxed out all of the loans he could take, which is why he had these alternative loans, he was calling them, from his brothers. And you can just see the stressed. I mean, I get these comments all the time. You can see how stressed he is. Just his constant kind of. So anyway, something needs to be done. Remember this? We don't have to go to the UN for direction on this. You can go to your own institution's mission statement, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find pretty good reason to be doing something about this. Here's the University of Minnesota, again, that's an example. To me, this gives me license to act. This is our mission. And not only is it a license, I feel like it's really a responsibility that we have. If we know this is happening, if we see those statistics from the study that was done here in Florida, and seeing the impact it's having on student success, it's really our responsibility. I think we need to stop waiting for somebody else to solve the problems for us. It's time to really own it and move forward. I think this is what's so wonderful about this meeting, is that it seems to me this is what this is all about. This is about us taking action, doing something. We might not know quite what to do yet, but the first step is acknowledging that we need to do something. Right? I always hesitate showing this slide because it comes off as really negative. It is really negative, I'll admit. I don't want to say that we are the problem. I want to really imply that we are the solution here. And instead of kind of feeling like we're stuck in it, we can collectively act and do something about it. That, frankly, is, and that's what we do all the time, actually. It's that in the case of open education, the case of content, course content, we seem to be a little more stuck than we have been in the past. When it comes to our students on campus who have, say, disabilities that might get in the way of learning, we don't kind of wait around and say, oh, I wish someone would come along with, I don't know, a new product that could help our students. No, we create an Office of Disability Services. We do something, we act on it. Because it's too important to our mission. We want all students to have access. We don't say, well, I wish our faculty were better teachers so they knew how to teach, or we could help them teaching. No, we know that's too important to our mission. We create things like offices of teaching and learning, or educational technology offices, or distance learning offices, right, to help with that. We know how important it is. And in this case, we need to do that same kind of thing. Hey, problem solved. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. We need to do that. We are the right people. We are the right people to be doing something, right? The Open Textbook Network, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and not because I'm trying to sell anything. I'm not a vendor. We're based at the University of Minnesota. We're a community of institutions is what we are. And I want to talk about it mainly because we really believe that we are the right people to do something about this, and we are trying to collectively do something. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, because I think it might be a little bit helpful because it's not always clear what we should be doing, right? And I'm going to start by actually telling you how I started doing this work in open education. And I've presented this before, and one of my managing directors calls this how Dave failed. So be gentle on me, okay? So when I first started, this is probably, about 6 or 7 years ago or so, and I just was working with faculty in my college of education. These are some of there were 9 of them that I started talking to about it. I realized these open textbooks existed, and I just started talking to them about why not? And by the way, these are some of the most amazing faculty I've ever known. They teach our freshmen. Our freshman class is about a third to a half first-generation students. They are so focused on their success, and they're just amazing people. And I thought, okay, if there's a group of people that I could really start talking to about this would be the right one. And so I did. And what I found out were some barriers. There are real barriers to people adopting these things. They didn't know there was they had no idea that they even existed, right? And that's probably one of our biggest barriers. They didn't know where to find them. Okay? So I said, okay. And one of the first things I did is I went to my dean and I said to her, you know what? These are some barriers to this. It'd be great for our faculty if we could help them with that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to create this library of textbooks so that they're easy to find. If they're all in one place, it'd be just as easy to go here as it would be to go to Grand Hill or wherever else, and just look up their subject matter and find something. Luckily, my dean is awesome, and she said yes. And if she would have said no, that would have been the end of all of everything that's happened since. But she said yes, we created this. And the faculty I've been talking to kind of said, oh, cool, okay, now I see where, now I see where they are. I can find ones that are interesting to me. How many options do you think I have? Remember the title of this? 0. Out of the 9, 0. And none of them dissed it. I mean, they were all just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. That's okay, nice, thanks. And they do what I do after I go to a meeting or if someone tells me about a new idea. I go back to my office and I get back to work. And I go, oh, that's a good idea. I'll put it on my list of things to look at later. All right, so I went back and started having more discussions with them, and I found out more things. They don't understand that even these faculty who are really focused on their student success, they didn't understand the financial stress the students are under. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what open textbooks were. Digital, electronic, right? They confused it with things. So with these things, there was some understanding. You know, they don't understand, they don't know, they don't. So basically, what's the solution to that? Education, right? I worked it out something. So I did. I sat down. I went through whole information about student success, these graphs that you've already seen, the cost of textbooks, this data, what creative commons license is, so they'd understand what the open textbook is. How many options do you think I had after that? Okay, catching on. 0. None. Positive reaction, no action. Okay, so back to the drawing board. Basically went back, and I realized this one was the big barrier. They found the books, but they just weren't sure about them. I've got a free book. You've got it. So I asked them to, I thought, okay, how do we judge quality? It's by peer review, right? So I actually asked them, would you go and write a review? Write a review for a textbook. Pick one out, write a review. Nobody wrote a review. Why would they? They didn't have time to do that. Last barrier here, they just don't have the time to engage in this. So I actually, as a solution to this is the last piece that turned into the clip. I went back to my meeting and I said, you know what? They've already spent a ton of time with me. They spent hours listening to me. I want to ask them to write a review. And you can put it in the textbook library, and here's the understanding they think about it. Would you pay them $200 a piece? And she agreed to that, yay. And what we ended up with, so we've done all of these things now. At the library, did the workshop, asked them to write a review. How many options do you think I had? All right, eventually I have to succeed, right? I mean, I'm up here on stage after all. No. I have, of the 9, there were 11. Wow, thank you. There were out of 9, there were 7 who adopted, and they went back to their program areas and talked 4 more into it. So it was all of these pieces. They needed all of it. It wasn't just this very piece of paying the money to do it. It wasn't that. It was all these pieces together. And that is what led to the creation of the Open Textbook Network. We basically took that strategy, tried replicating it across a number of institutions, and it's been really successful. I mean, just that one little strategy was the beginning of it. We're much more than that now, but we now have members that are, I think, 81 as of today, representing 630 some 4 institutions, something like that. The blue dots are institutions, the red dots are systems or consortia that have joined. So you can see they cover whole states usually. And so we are basically in the trenches with them, working with their faculty, and more importantly, showing them how to talk to their faculty, work with their faculty, and engage their faculty and solve problems together. And so It's grown from that little strategy, which still remains an important one, because we know it works. We'll look at it a little bit later, to doing all of these things. This is what the Open Textbook Community Network community does now. Leadership training, program development, faculty development, community problem solving. It's getting big enough to be a real dynamic community that is getting things done on its own now. And creating common resources that are even available to you, and I'll show you some of the things that are out there for you. The leadership training, we will go, on Monday I was in Missouri. I was doing statewide training for library doers, 75 libraries, instructional designers, library leaders were there as well, doing basically program development training. Also, during the summer, we bring everyone to Minnesota. It's in the summer. And we have an Open Textbook Network Institute and a summit where we get the whole community together and do a number of things, including training, but also some community-generated problems. They generate problems that they want to work on for the rest of the year. I'll show you those a little bit later, too. We train them. Here's an example of the kind of thing we talk to them about, and they're very broad. Some of them are very broad, some of them are very specific. They're all really important. Things to keep in mind, we tell them. Number one, don't demonize. When you're involved in initiatives like this, nobody wants to drink that water, right? It doesn't help to be demonizing publishers or bookstores or faculty who don't adopt or whoever. You can pick a number of people. It is not helpful. Faculty have lots of great relationships with publishers. The bookstore has been basically trying to meet affordability issues longer than we have. You know, faculty are supposed to be the ones making decisions about their content. They don't go into that as their business. So, demonizing doesn't help anybody. Right? You don't need to be a salesman. Be an educator. It changes the dynamics completely when you think that way. I started out being like a salesperson, like I had to get that stuff, I had to do some of it. But eventually I realized, you know, it's not my job. It's not my responsibility to make sure that happens. That is that faculty member's responsibility, and they are the ones who should make the decision. My job is to educate them on what the impact of that might be and what options they have. And let it go from there. It took a huge load off my shoulders. And it works better. The faculty trust you when you're not selling something. And then last, just as an example, we practice answering really tough questions, because when you're working with a room full of faculty, you'll get some really tough questions. And basically what we train them to do is just make sure you're respectful in that. Like, I mean, you honor those questions. That's what we train faculty to do, is question things. And they are engaging with you. That's a great opportunity. Right? So those are the kinds of things we do. We have an IMLS grant to create basically a librarian boot camp, an OER boot camp, to help librarians build their own program. Those workshops that I was talking about earlier, they've now been done across the country over 200 times, engaged thousands of faculty, and 45% of the faculty who come out of those workshops say that they're going to adopt an open textbook, which we're really happy and proud of. We help folks do return on investment calculations. So for instance, if you want to run a workshop like the ones we were just talking about, and you're paying faculty $200 to write a review and to attend the workshop, here's the investment of, say, 20 faculty. If we do a quick calculation on the return, 45% of faculty adopt. Let's say they only teach 30 students. That's a really pretty conservative estimate. And it's $100 savings per student, which is also probably pretty conservative. With the return on investment there. So we'll kind of help them sell their programs to their administrators to say, look, here's what we can be doing. And here's the return we're going to be getting. Or if they're talking to student government, to ask the student government for some funding. Say, look, if you can invest this amount of money paying for stipends, for instance, this is the return your student body will get. When we get together in the summer, they define problems they want to work on, the community does. These are the problems for this year. These are the things they want to accomplish. They want to figure out, it's very librarian-centric group. Most of our members are joined through institutions joined through their libraries. But we also have circle designers, center for teaching and learning, distance learning offices, provost office, things like that. So one of them wants to focus on how to engage instructional designers more and help best instructional designer practices. Figure out, if you don't have $200 to pay a faculty member, what's another way to incentivize them to engage? They want a mentor buddy system in the Open Textbook Network. Anyway, and so on. So these, and there are working groups right now that are actively working on these things, and they will come up with some documents. Those will all be publicly released and CC by license, and everything will do that. So it will benefit everybody in higher education. We've already done a few things that have come from some of these working groups. A guidebook for people who want to do research on their open adoptions. We hired the Open Ed group out of Brigham Young University to do that one. They're the top researchers in the country. A book about how to modify an open textbook and how to create an open textbook, an authored open textbook. These are all common good things. You can go on our website and download them, and they're there for you. The open textbook library is our most important kind of common good asset. When we first built it in 2012, after my dean said yes, I think we found 75 open textbooks to put in there. I looked last night, there's 460. So it's continuing to grow. There's the URL for it if you're interested in finding that, and it's completely open. You don't have to create an account or whatever. You just go and download the books, and they're yours. There we go. 460 textbooks. There are now 1,700 reviews of those textbooks from faculty from those workshops. 2/3 of them have reviews, and there's now 2.1 million. It took us about 4 years to get the first million or so visitors, and now it's about 6 months. It's growing. There we go, right there. That's our traffic on the library. So this isn't going away anytime soon. Here's what the reviews look like, by the way. Rating from 1 to 5. This is what faculty are saying, which surprises me. I didn't expect such a skewed bell curve here, but they're saying they're reasonable. They're decent. The thing we focused on mostly has been on adoption. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit, like helping faculty adopt things that have already been made. That's what the open textbook library is for. That's what the workshop's for. But if we're really going to own this, we have to do some. We also need to engage in creation, don't we? We have 460 books, which is awesome, that have been made. We're not making them. I want to be clear about that. They are being made all across the country and world. And we're just cataloging them, making them easier to find. But we want to find ways to engage the higher ed community in creation as well, because there are still plenty of faculty who will look at the library and say, yeah, there's nothing for my class there. There's nothing there. So there are a couple of things we're doing. One thing is that if you're familiar with Pressbooks at all, like any of our members, like we give Sandbox access to, we have an agreement with Pressbooks, we'll give Sandbox access to anybody so they can play around with Pressbooks, which is a publishing platform built on WordPress and plug it into all of that. And then also they'll get a discount if they decide they actually want to use the Pressbooks platform. And then the thing I'm most excited about right now, that we're in pilot, we've just started the pilot, which is what we're calling the Publishing Cooperative. Pressbooks is a good solution for people who kind of do-it-yourselfers, who kind of want to go in and work in kind of a WordPress environment and write something and what can come out and look nice. But if there are a lot of institutions out there who really are we're wanting a real professional publishing experience. They wanted their faculty to publish textbooks, and they were willing to support them. Maryland, I heard yesterday, has been doing this for years. But many libraries and institutions just didn't know what to do, and they didn't have the services available to them. So we studied this problem for about 2 years and finally went to a number of university presses and said, could you help us with this? They're actually looking for things to do, university presses. And we dug down, and we got to a few really innovative presses, and at the end of the day, they said, you know what, if you work with us on this, we actually are just going to pass your work through to this company we use to do the work. So why don't you just go work? You'd be better off just working directly with them, which is what we're doing. And so we have contracted with this company to basically support institutions, and they have this whole platform and technology, and we're doing professional development. We're bringing people on board to help support the effective creation of open textbooks. These 9 institutions and organizations have opted in. They are paying the costs, which are very low. I think they estimated probably $8,000 to $13,000 a book for the actual production, depending on what services you want or need and which ones you're going to find yourself. Really super inexpensive. This is what size can do. We can kind of leverage our size to make this work. So we've just started the training. We're really excited. The next 2 years, they've all promised 2 or 3 textbooks by the end of a couple of years. So we're going to have another couple dozen open textbooks from this group. They will retain the branding. They get all the credit. We want the institutions to own this. They should get all the credit. That's all of the, the front banner will say, University of Cincinnati. Open Textbook Network, we're not a publisher. We're just trying to help them. All these books will be CC BY licensed. Everyone's agreed to that. Where did I put my clicker? And I'm excited about it because it's a new model that really helps us take back ownership of publishing and creating these educational materials. It is a pilot. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited about it, but it's a new model, and there are lots of question marks, and we're going to learn a lot, no doubt. We hope to have started another round of this in the fall, in September, another group of institutions that we're going to engage in this. So there's a lot going on nationally. There's so much attention to open education right now. I want to stress again my main points. Something needs to be done. We are the right ones to do it. It can be done. It's being done. Some of you are doing it. It's being done across the country. We still have a lot to learn, don't we? And because we have a lot to learn, the best way to do that is just community and doing it together. That's what I know the Open Textbook Network is aiming to do. I know the Florida Virtual Campus is aiming to do that as well. Oh, Marilyn, you're in there. Very good. And this is the best part of all of this work. And I hope you feel like there's a community you can reach out to because doesn't that look like fun? It is fun when you're working with a group. Like I said, we get folks together every summer in Minnesota. On a riverboat here. And it grew from the first, we've done 3 years now. The first year was about 20 people. It was a small little group. And then last year it was about 100. That's how big it's grown. And we're worried about this year. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's going to be, I'm worried it's like, oh my gosh, it's becoming big. But so as you move forward, I hope you find ways to move forward together with people, like-minded people who are working on the same thing. And you can share ideas, you can share enthusiasm and frustrations and all of that. Time for questions, I think. Oh, I have 10 minutes. Talk fast.
I'm Lisa from Santa Fe College. One of the, that list that you had of the barriers, one of the things that I'm hearing most from faculty that wasn't on there was that they would rather use textbook, publish the textbook publisher content because it has all the bells and whistles that go with the textbook. And then you have you have open textbook. There's still a lot of work to do to create all the supplemental materials and test sections and things like that.
Yep.
So the 2 to 3, this group that you have, where each one is going to publish 2 to 3.
Right.
Are they committed to also including one of those
of them have said they want to do that, but it's unclear how they're going to do it at this point. Yeah, it depends, and it depends on the textbook. Not all of them need that. Some have said that that's what they want to do, but we still have a lot of work to figure out how. There are a number of folks, either small companies or even institutions who are trying to create some infrastructure to build question banks and things like that. And they already exist in, WebAssign and those kinds of things as well. So, so whether we end up with that or not, I don't know. I would point out that open textbooks that are out there already, some of them have a lot of ancillary materials available. I just want to, like when we work with faculty, we make sure we tell them, don't assume they don't have them. Some of them don't. Just like commercial textbooks, some of them don't. But some of them do, and make sure you don't assume they don't. Make sure you take a look. But good question.
This is one more comment question related to this. First of all, here's one of the books in international business.
Yeah.
So that's a recommendation, not any additional materials, but I was at the students to read it.
Very good.
Gives students team projects, go through chapters, and outlines and presentations related to material. So
Excellent.
In a number of my classes, I do one master student co-creation of the textbook based on that. Students really do want an outline, which is really on the PowerPoint. Something else. The other thing is, in terms of these expenses, I would remember one particular thing. Three of those expense categories are always listed. They would incur anyway. The urban board are going to be paying whether it's or not. They're going to be buying shampoo whether it's or not.
Right.
They're going to be transportation issues whether it's or not. Only two. We're going to be with the sort of tuition textbooks.
Right.
And we can't do anything about tuition at this stage.
Right.
We do something with textbooks, and other things, the students do something with textbooks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this stuff available.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Patty Martinez, and I'm a research honor at Embry-Riddle, Carolina University. And I was curious if you've heard any anecdotal evidence or seen any signs that students who are taking classes taught by faculty who aren't adopting OER resources are changing and dropping those classes and moving to opting for classes that do use OER resources. And if maybe that could be sort of an incentive to faculty who aren't adopting to start doing so.
Yeah, our engagement is kind of a level above that with the staff who are working with those matters. I can't really say, but I do know that Daniel, I think, said that yesterday, like what he has seen in his own institution when they created their degree, if I remember that correctly. I think it's not exactly that. People saying they want to transfer actually to the one that, which makes complete sense. You do hear students talk about shopping for courses, and some institutions are working really hard at creating systems that make it transparent what the course materials cost is before they sign up. That's a hard thing to do, but it's something they're working on to allow students to kind of have some consumer leverage in a way. So yes, I think there is. I don't have that evidence. I think Daniel does. It is out there. Other questions?
Not a question, but just an additional comment in response to that question. I think Marie, yesterday, from the University of Maryland, said the same thing at the UMOC campus. The students have started out from the traditional campuses and grow. Right?
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe I remember the comment. I know too? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes?
David, in all of your visitations that you've given across the nation, I'm just curious if you have seen what we experienced at my university when I was in Hayden presented. There was a profound difference between the reaction from our faculty and that of the campus
I certainly have had the experience where I presented at a community college in Minnesota, brought up this idea of the theory to them. They got so excited. They went into the auditorium, stood up on stage, said, "We're doing this, Mr. President, sing it back. Are you in support of it or not?" I mean, I kind of, I see, but, and he kind of stood up back and said some very like neutral, non-committal things, but he was kind of put on the spot, granted. They now are creating a theory. They've moved forward. And so I think I understand that. I agree with the first part of that premise that certainly when faculty learn about this is an amazing fun thing. When you're in a room with faculty and you're talking about this and you're explaining what it is and that you can do this and kind of like you can be the hero in this story, they hear it. I mean, it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. There might be a few outliers that have some tough questions, but they should have tough questions in my mind, and we engage with that. But overall, I see that reaction to that everywhere. Faculty, when they are engaging with this, go, oh, wow, yeah. From the administrative side of it, if you're starting an open education program that's changed, that's cost, and they have to think about it, and they have to engage in those kind of conversations. So discussions about return on investment, what this is going to mean to your institution. A lot of the things Daniel was talking about yesterday about, they made another $500,000 in tuition because of the retention rate and all those kinds of things. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be better at communicating to administrators about. This is a win-win-win-win-win. There's nobody who loses here, which is the other thing about this. It's often hard to see those things.
I'll add one more thing to that.
You don't talk about this as money. You talk about it as student success. Everybody pays more attention. Faculty, administrators, everybody. What's your question?
We love out of the University of West Florida. This is fascinating. I love the open textbooks, especially for nursing students that spend a fortune on your books. My question is, there any kind of appraisal process? Like I go through some reviews, and it seems like all the faculty are reviewing I see they're listed as medicine textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
My question is there any type of appraisal process for these textbooks?
You mean like when they're created, or?
As I, as a faculty, reviewing something like this, or the faculty that have reviewed it or endorsed it.
So there is a standard rubric that if you look at those reviews, they're all in the same structure. That's what you mean. I'm not sure. There is a standard that every single review is exactly the same structure. So there are 10 elements that they're reviewing that are being launched out. So there's a standard that was kind of agreed on by the faculty who kind of worked on this. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure. Sorry about that.
So those standards are the ones that the endorsers are using whenever they review the textbooks?
Right, and I wouldn't call them endorsers because they're really just reviewers. They do not think of themselves as endorsers. They are simply reviewing. The reviews have ended up being more positive. Yeah, and when we hold the workshop, I explained to them, like, please, like, we can use some data on that, but please be honest. We want to honest review, not so honest. We want honest. So yeah, they all use that same rubric. It's all very standardized. Yeah.
So not these reviewers that I'm reading are doing the standardization rubric, but somebody else.
No, they are fully doing the standard rubric.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.